I was 10 years old when my world changed forever. I still remember that night clearly, the sound of breaking glass, my mom crying, and my 5-year-old sister Sarah clutching my arm as we huddled in our shared bedroom. It was the night Mom finally had enough of Dad's drinking and kicked him out. The changes came fast. Dad disappeared completely, no visits, no child support, nothing. Mom had to work longer hours at her office job, leaving me to pick up the slack at home. At 10, I learned to use the microwave, figured out how to work the washing machine, and became responsible for getting Sarah ready for school. "Lucy, you're such a good big sister," Mom would say, kissing my forehead when she came home late, exhausted from work. "I don't know what I'd do without you." But it wasn't easy. While other kids my age were playing after school, I was walking Sarah home, helping her with homework, and trying to keep our small apartment somewhat clean. I learned to make simple meals, sandwiches, pasta, anything that didn't require using the stove. Sarah would complain about having the same food all the time, but I did my best. Mom and I sacrificed everything for Sarah. When she needed new shoes, I wore my old ones for another season. When she wanted to join the dance class, Mom picked up extra shifts to pay for it. We wanted her to have a normal childhood, even if it meant we couldn't have one ourselves. The years passed this way, with me juggling school and home responsibilities while Mom worked herself to exhaustion. Then, when I was 13, something amazing happened. Mom got promoted to senior manager at her company. Suddenly, our financial struggles began to ease. "Girls, I have something to tell you," Mom announced one evening, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "We're going to be able to move to a house. A real house with a yard." Sarah squealed with delight, but I felt a mix of emotions. Yes, I was happy we'd have more space, and Mom wouldn't have to work quite so many hours. But I'd made friends in our neighborhood, and my school was here. When Mom said I could stay at my current school, I felt relieved. Sarah, however, was enrolled in an expensive private school across town. Several years have passed since then. Mom earned well, and I was able to continue my studies after school. The day I left for college was bittersweet. Mom helped me pack my few belongings into her car for the 3-hour drive to State University, while Sarah lounged on the couch, barely looking up from her phone to say goodbye. "Call me when you get settled," Mom said, hugging me tight outside my dormitory. Her eyes were wet, but she was smiling. "I'm so proud of you, Lucy." I watched her drive away, knowing the sacrifices she'd made to get me here. No dating, no social life, just endless work and saving to give us both a chance at a good education. The tuition money she'd saved for me represented years of overtime and careful budgeting. I was determined not to waste a penny of it. My dorm room was tiny, with creaky furniture and a roommate who barely spoke English, but it felt like freedom. Within a week, I'd found a job at the campus coffee shop, working early morning shifts, before classes. The manager liked that I already knew how to balance responsibilities. Between classes, work, and studying, I barely had time to breathe, but I loved it. My professors noticed my dedication, and by the end of my first semester, I was on the dean's list. That's when the calls from Sarah started becoming more frequent. "Lucy, you'll never believe how unfair Mom is being," she whined through the phone one evening as I was finishing my economics homework. "Everyone at school is going to Coachella, but she says it's too expensive. $3,000 isn't even that much." I nearly choked on my ramen noodles. 3,000? Sarah, that's crazy. The calls followed a pattern. One week it was concert tickets, the next it was a designer bag everyone at her school had. When Mom refused, Sarah would call me, hoping I'd either send money or convince Mom to give in. My breakthrough came during junior year. My business strategy professor recommended me for an internship at Preston and Associates, one of the top firms in the city. The work was challenging, but I threw myself into every task, staying late and coming in early. "We don't usually do this," Mr. Preston told me one afternoon, "but we'd like to offer you a position here after graduation. Your work ethic is exceptional." I was walking back to my dorm, still floating from the news, when my phone buzzed. Sarah again. Mom's being impossible, she started, without even saying hello. She won't give me money for a spring break trip to Cancun. Everyone's going except me. Can you send me like $800? I'll pay you back someday. Sarah, why don't you get a part-time job? I suggested, not for the first time. The mall's always hiring. You could earn your own money for things like this. Ugh, as if. You so boring and responsible all the time. No wonder you don't have any friends at college. All you do is work and study. She hung up before I could respond. I stood outside my dorm building, staring at my phone and wondering how two sisters could turn out so differently. While I was building my future one coffee order and study session at a time, Sarah was still waiting for everything to be handed to her on a silver platter. Graduation day felt surreal. As I walked across the stage to receive my diploma, I spotted Mom in the audience, beaming with pride. Sarah wasn't there, she had a really important social event that day. 2 weeks later, I started at Preston and Associates. When my first real paycheck hit my account, I knew exactly what I wanted to do with it. I spent hours picking out the perfect gifts, an elegant silk scarf and matching bag for Mom, and a high-end makeup set from Sarah's favorite brand for my sister. Surprise! I called out, walking into our family home one Friday evening. Mom was in the kitchen, cooking dinner as always. Lucy, Mom rushed to hug me. When I handed her the wrapped package, her eyes welled up. Oh, honey, this is too much, she whispered, running her fingers over the silk. Nothing's too much for you, Mom. Sarah clomped down the stairs then, already frowning. I thought I heard your voice. What are you doing here? I brought you something. I handed her the beautifully wrapped makeup set. She opened it carelessly, ripping the paper. Oh, I actually wanted the other collection from this brand. You should have just given me the money, I would have bought what I actually needed. Sarah, Mom scolded, but I just shrugged. Some things never changed. Life moved quickly after that. I rented a small but clean apartment closer to work, determined to save enough for a down payment on my own place someday. At Preston and Associates, I threw myself into every project, staying late and coming in early. Within 6 months, I had my first promotion. Then came the call from Mom. I don't know what to do anymore, she sighed. Sarah's dropped out of college. Says it's not for her. Do you know how much money I've already paid for this semester? She says she's going to be an influencer. Keeps asking for money for camera equipment and designer clothes for her videos. Lucy, I'm still working 60-hour weeks to pay for all this. I tried talking to Sarah, driving to her favorite coffee shop where she was working on content. Oh my God, spare me the responsible big sister act. She rolled her eyes. Not everyone wants your boring corporate life. I'm building my brand. Mom gets it, even if you don't. But Mom didn't get it. She kept working overtime to support Sarah's influencer career, which seemed to consist mainly of shopping hauls and coffee shop photos. Then I met James. It was at my friend Maria's housewarming party. He was her colleague from the architecture firm down the street. Want to grab coffee sometime? He asked as the party was winding down. One coffee date turned into dinner. Dinner turned into weekend trips, and before I knew it, a year had passed. When he proposed, it felt right. We moved in together in my rented apartment, planning to save for a house. By then, Sarah had her own place too, funded by Mom, of course. She'd gotten a job at an upscale boutique, though it seemed more about the employee discount than actual work. The call came on a Tuesday morning. I was in the middle of a presentation when I saw Mom's number flash on my phone. Something in my gut told me to step out and take it. Lucy? Mom's voice was small, unlike I'd ever heard it before. I need you to come to the hospital. The doctors, they found something. The next few hours passed in a blur. I drove the 3 hours to my hometown, my hand shaking on the steering wheel. Cancer, stage 3. Words like aggressive treatment and survival rates bounced off the sterile hospital walls while I held Mom's trembling hand. All I could think about was how small she looked in that huge hospital bed, this woman who had always been our family's foundation. Mom had to quit her job, despite her protests that she could still work. Thankfully, her years of careful saving meant she had enough put aside for treatment. She'd always been preparing for some unnamed future emergency. I just never imagined it would be this. The first rounds of chemotherapy were brutal. I'd drive to Mom's house after work, help her to the bathroom, make dinner, and try not to let her see me cry as more of her hair fell out. The 3-hour drive back home in the dark was exhausting, but I couldn't bear the thought of her being alone. Sarah should be here to see this, Mom whispered one evening as I was preparing her favorite soup. She should know. I called Sarah that evening on my drive home. Mom's asking for you. I'm really busy right now, Lucy. I've got this collaboration coming up. She has cancer, Sarah. She needs both her daughters. A long pause. I can't deal with hospitals and sick people. It's too depressing, you know? I pulled over to the side of the highway, my hands trembling with anger. I'll pay you, monthly. Whatever you're making at the boutique, I'll match it if you'll help take care of Mom when I can't be here. Sarah's laugh was cold. Are you serious? I'm not going to waste my time playing nurse to a sick person. That's what actual nurses are for. The next day, I arranged for a professional nurse, Angela, despite Mom's protests that it was too expensive. You need proper care when I'm at work or driving back home, I insisted. Angela turned out to be a blessing, capable, kind, and professional in all the ways Sarah refused to be. But then a new problem emerged. James. You're never home anymore, he complained one night when I finally made it back to our apartment around midnight. I feel like I'm living alone. My mother has cancer, James. She needs me. And what about what I need? He ran his hands through his hair in frustration. When was the last time we had dinner together? Or watched a movie? Or did anything normal couples do? This isn't forever, I tried to explain, exhausted from the long drive. She's sick. She needs help. That's what the nurse is for. You don't have to drive there every single day. You're going to kill yourself with these long drives. You look exhausted all the time. But I couldn't stop. Sarah wouldn't do it. James didn't understand. And Mom had spent 25 years taking care of us. How could I do any less for her now? As the weeks of Mom's treatment wore on, I started noticing uncomfortable similarities between James and Sarah. They both had the same way of shirking responsibility, the same talent for making excuses, the same aversion to anything that wasn't fun or easy. I first noticed it during one of our weekend visits to Mom's house. While I was upstairs helping Mom with her medication and making sure she ate something, I could hear laughter floating up from below. James and Sarah were sitting in the living room, sharing jokes and stories like old friends. Honey, Mom whispered, go tell them to keep it down. I went downstairs to find them sharing Sarah's phone screen, both grinning at something. Could you two please keep it down? I asked, trying to keep my voice level. Mom's trying to rest. And James, could you come help me with her lunch? They looked up at me like teenagers caught passing notes in class. Always so serious, Sarah rolled her eyes. God, you're such a buzzkill, James added. Totally boring, they said almost simultaneously, then burst into fresh laughter at their synchronicity. I stood there, watching my husband and sister share a private joke at my expense, and felt something shift inside me. Something important was happening here, but I was too exhausted to figure out what it was. The months crawled by in a haze of hospital visits, late-night drives, and increasingly frequent moments of finding James and Sarah in deep conversation. But then, finally, a miracle, Mom's latest test showed remission. The cancer was retreating. You need a break, my boss said after I burst into tears of relief at my desk. Take some time off. You've more than earned it. That night, I browsed through travel websites, looking at beach resorts and tropical paradises. For the first time in months, I let myself dream about something other than hospital corridors and medication schedules. The Maldives? James said, suddenly interested as he peered over my shoulder. It was the most engaged he'd been with me in months. That looks amazing. I was thinking about a couple of weeks there, I said cautiously. Now that Mom's better. Yes, his enthusiasm surprised me. Let's do it, I'll take time off too. God knows we need this. For the next few days, we were almost like newlyweds again, excitedly planning our trip. We booked an overwater bungalow, researched restaurants, planned snorkeling excursions. James even surprised me by arranging a couple's massage package. For the first time in months, I felt hopeful. Maybe this vacation would help us find our way back to each other. Maybe all we needed was some time away from everything, the hospitals, the stress, the constant worry. 1 week before our scheduled departure to the Maldives, Mom collapsed. I was at work when Angela called. Lucy, you need to come quickly. Your mother's not well. The familiar drive to Mom's house had never felt longer. At the hospital, the doctors spoke in grave tones about heart complications from the chemotherapy. Mom looked so fragile in the hospital bed, nothing like the woman who'd raised us. Sarah, I said when she finally answered my call, I need you to stay with Mom. I can't be here all the time, and she needs someone. Are you kidding me? Sarah cut me off. I told you, I'm not playing nurse. I have plans. I hung up and called James next. His reaction was worse. No, he said flatly when I told him I couldn't go on the trip. No way. You are not canceling this vacation. My mother is in the hospital. There's always something with your mother. The tickets are non-refundable, Lucy. I'm going, with or without you. Are you serious right now? My mother could be dying. Yeah? Well, our marriage is dying too, but you don't seem to care about that. I packed a bag and moved to Mom's house that night. James didn't try to stop me. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with an Instagram notification. James had posted a photo of his overwater bungalow. Paradise found, read the caption. I tried to push down my anger and focus on Mom. But on the third morning, as I was helping her take a sip of water, she squeezed my hand weakly. Lucy, she whispered. I'm sorry. Those were her last words. Her heart gave out an hour later. The world stopped making sense. I moved through the next few hours in a fog, holding her cold hand until the doctors gently pulled me away. My calls to James went straight to voicemail. Sarah's phone just rang and rang. I sat alone in Mom's quiet house, surrounded by sympathy casseroles from neighbors, trying to plan a funeral for the woman who'd given everything for us. The funeral home needed decisions. The obituary needed writing. But my husband was gone, and my sister was nowhere to be found. In desperation, I called Jenny, Sarah's best friend since high school. Jenny, have you heard from Sarah? I can't reach her, and Mom died this morning. The silence on the other end stretched too long. Lucy, her voice was small, guilty. I think you should know something. Sarah, she's in the Maldives. She's with James. They left together. I'm so sorry, Lucy. I should have told you sooner, but Sarah made me promise. I hung up before she could finish. With shaking hands, I opened Sarah's Instagram profile. There it was, a photo of a tropical sunset, posted an hour ago. The same view James had posted yesterday. I sat in Mom's favorite chair, in the house where she'd raised us, where she'd sacrificed everything to give us a good life, and tried to comprehend how my sister and my husband could do this. Not just the affair, that was bad enough, but to abandon us now, when Mom was dying? To be sipping cocktails in paradise while I planned our mother's funeral alone? The depth of their betrayal was almost as devastating as losing Mom. Almost. Mom's funeral was small and quiet. The chapel was filled with her coworkers, old friends, and neighbors, but the 2 empty seats in the front row spoke volumes. I delivered the eulogy alone, my voice somehow staying steady as I talked about Mom's strength, her sacrifice, her unconditional love. A week later, I was sitting in Mom's kitchen, surrounded by sympathy cards I couldn't bring myself to open, when I heard the front door unlock. Sarah's laugh floated in first, that familiar, carefree sound that now felt like a knife in my chest. Then James's deeper chuckle joined in. They strolled into the kitchen like they were returning from a casual weekend away, both golden tanned and relaxed. Sarah had a new designer bag. James's wedding ring was gone. "Oh good, you're here," Sarah said, as if we were meeting for coffee. "We need to talk." James wrapped his arm around Sarah's waist, and I watched my sister lean into my husband's embrace. The casual intimacy of it made my stomach turn. "I'm filing for divorce," James announced, pulling a manila envelope from his bag. "Sarah and I are getting married." I stared at them, these two sun-kissed strangers wearing the faces of people I'd once loved. Without a word, I took the papers and signed them, using the pen Mom had always kept by the phone for writing grocery lists. "Great!" Sarah clapped her hands. "Now, you need to get out of the house. It's mine now." I looked up from the divorce papers. "What?" "Mom always loved me best," Sarah said, examining her manicure. "Obviously she left everything to me. I mean, I was her baby. You were just there. God, she probably felt obligated to keep you around." I packed a small bag that night, taking only what I knew was undeniably mine. I couldn't stay in that house with them, watching them play house in the space where Mom had just died. Where she'd fought so hard to live. A week later, my phone rang. It was Mom's notary, Mr. Patterson, inviting me to the official reading of the will. When I arrived at his office, Sarah and James were already there, holding hands and whispering to each other like teenagers. Sarah shot me a triumphant smile. Mr. Patterson cleared his throat and began to read. "I, Elizabeth Marie Chen, being of sound mind, declare this to be my last will and testament." I watched Sarah's smile grow wider with each preliminary paragraph. Then Mr. Patterson reached the distributions. "To my eldest daughter, Lucy Chen, I leave my house at 1542 Maple Street, and all my savings accounts totaling $400,000. Sarah's smile vanished. "What?" "To my youngest daughter, Sarah Chen, I leave $50,000, with the hope that she will use it wisely." I feel compelled to add that I recently overheard Sarah discussing her anticipation of my death and her plans for all that cash. While this was painful to hear, it only confirmed what I already knew about both my daughters' characters. Sarah's face had turned an ugly shade of red. James was suddenly very interested in his shoes. Additionally, Mr. Patterson continued, "I have left a private letter for Lucy." He handed me an envelope. Inside was a single page in Mom's familiar handwriting. "My dearest Lucy, you have always been the strongest of us, even when you thought you weren't. You learned early what Sarah never did, that love means showing up, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. I'm leaving you everything because I know you'll use it wisely. As for Sarah, I'm leaving her enough to help her if she truly needs it, but not enough to hurt her. If she ever truly changes, truly grows up, you can help her if you choose to. But only if she earns it. All my love, Mom." I had barely finished reading Mom's letter when Sarah's scream echoed off the notary's office walls. "This is ridiculous. I'll sue you, Lucy. I'll take half of everything." Mr. Patterson adjusted his glasses calmly. "Miss Chen, the will is ironclad. Your mother had it properly witnessed and notarized 3 months ago, shortly after she overheard your conversation about her death. You don't have any grounds for contest." James stood up then, straightening his tie like he was preparing for a business negotiation. "Actually, I believe I'm entitled to half of Lucy's inheritance. We were still married when Elizabeth drew up the will, and—" "Mr. Turner," Mr. Patterson interrupted, "I've been practicing law in this state for 30 years. Inheritance is not considered marital property here, even if received during marriage. You have no claim to any of it." I watched their faces as it sank in. They'd get nothing but Sarah's $50,000. No house, no savings, no easy path to the luxury lifestyle they'd been dreaming of while Mom was dying. They left, but it wasn't the end. For weeks, James kept trying to contact me. Flowers delivered to my job. Lengthy emails about how he'd found clarity during our separation. Tearful voicemails about second chances. Sarah took a different approach. She alternated between threats of legal action and tearful apologies, depending on the day. "I'm your sister," she'd plead in her messages. "Family forgives." But Mom had taught me that family means showing up when things are hard. Neither of them had shown up when it mattered most. Through mutual friends, I heard they'd moved in together, playing house with Sarah's $50,000. It lasted exactly 2 months before they imploded. Apparently, Sarah's spending habits and James's controlling nature weren't as compatible as they'd thought. They had a screaming match in a restaurant that ended with Sarah throwing her wine in James's face and him calling her a spoiled brat. I blocked them both on every platform, changed my phone number, and asked my friends not to give me updates anymore. Some stories don't need to be followed to their end. Now, 6 months later, I'm sitting in my kitchen, drinking coffee from her favorite mug. The house still holds her presence in every corner, but it's not painful anymore. I've repainted some rooms, rearranged furniture, made it mine while keeping the essence of her. Sometimes I wonder if Sarah will ever truly change, ever become someone Mom hoped she could be. The letter said I could help her if she did. But that's not my responsibility anymore. For the first time in my life, I'm focusing on my own healing, my own growth, my own future.